Richard's pulse pounded. He had enemies in the shadows, ones he didn't even know. And now, they were coming for him. Richard Adeyemi had always believed he was the most dangerous man in the room. But now, someone else was playing the game. He paced his penthouse, replaying the phone call in his mind. "You tried to kill the wrong woman, Adeyemi." Whoever had spoken those words wasn't just a threat. They knew everything. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A distorted voice spoke. "Meet me at the old warehouse on Broad Street. Come alone." Before he could respond, the line went dead. Richard exhaled slowly. He was walking into a trap. But he had no choice. At exactly midnight, Richard arrived at the warehouse. The air smelled of rust and rain, the flickering streetlight barely illuminating the entrance. A shadow stepped forward. Then, the bag over Kemi's head was ripped off. She gasped, her eyes wild as she saw Richard. "You bastard." Richard clenched his jaw. "You're alive." Disappointed. A voice mocked from the darkness. Another figure emerged. A man Richard had thought was long gone. Tunda Bakare. Richard's stomach tightened. "What is this?" Tunda grinned. "Oh, just a reunion. You see, Richard, I did a little digging. Turns out you're not the only one who wanted Femi dead." Richard's blood ran cold. Who else? Kemi's voice was cold. The people he was stealing from. Richard turned to her. Kemi's eyes burned with hatred. "You think Femi was only betraying you? He was playing a bigger game. Offshore accounts, international money laundering, stolen assets. He crossed the wrong people." Tunda nodded. "People who don't forgive." Richard's pulse pounded. "Who are they?" Tunda smirked. "The ones who want you dead next." Richard had spent his life fighting threats from within. Corrupt officials, greedy partners, betrayers like Femi. But now, he had a new kind of enemy. The kind that operated in the shadows. The kind that didn't make threats. They simply eliminated problems. Kemi leaned closer, voice deadly. "Femi's offshore accounts. His hidden millions. They think you have it." Richard stared at her. "And do I?" Tunda chuckled. "You tell us." Richard kept his face unreadable, but his mind raced. If Femi had left behind hidden money, someone would kill for it. And now, they thought that someone was Richard. The first attack came the next night. Richard was leaving his office when he noticed something off. The street was too quiet. The usual vendors were gone. His instincts screamed, "Move." A sharp sound split the air. A sniper's bullet shattered his car window. Richard dove, rolling behind a parked vehicle. He could hear footsteps. Someone was coming. He pulled his gun from his jacket. One shot. A muffled grunt. Silence. Richard exhaled, staring at the body. A professional. No ID. No fingerprints. Just a message carved into his wrist. 1 billion nairas or die. Money. And they thought Richard had it. By morning, Richard knew two things. 1. He didn't have Femi's money. 2. That wouldn't matter to the people hunting him. He needed an answer. Fast. There was only one person left who might know where Femi hid the money. Kemi. And whether she liked it or not, she was coming with him. Kemi Okonjo never thought she'd be sitting in the same car as Richard Adeyemi again, not after everything. Yet here she was, strapped into the passenger seat of his bulletproof Range Rover, gripping the armrest as they sped through the wet streets of Lagos. Richard kept his eyes on the road, his voice calm. Femi's offshore accounts. Where are they? Kemi scoffed. You really think he told me? Richard didn't blink. You were his wife. She turned to face him. And you were his best friend. Yet he still betrayed you. Silence. Richard clenched the steering wheel. He didn't have time for games. Whoever was after him wouldn't wait. Someone tried to kill me last night, he said. A professional. Kemi's expression shifted. And, he glanced at her. They think I have Femi's money. Her breath hitched. but she quickly masked it. Well, do you? If I did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Another silence, heavier this time. Finally, she exhaled. There is one place. Richard's grip tightened. Where? Kemi hesitated, then said the words that would change everything. Abuja. The next morning, they were on a private flight to Abuja. Richard had always hated the capital. Lagos was chaos, but at least he understood it. Abuja was different. Politicians, silent wars, and enemies in tailored suits. And now, someone here held the key to Femi's missing fortune. Their destination, a private bank in Maitama. As they walked through the glass doors, Kemi whispered, Femi had a safety deposit box here. I saw the key once. Richard didn't trust banks, especially ones that catered to men like Femi. Too many secrets. Too many hidden hands. A woman in a sleek black dress greeted them. How may we assist you? Richard smiled. We need access to a deposit box. The woman's polite expression never wavered. Do you have the key? Kemi slid an envelope across the counter. Inside was a photocopy of Femi's signature and an authorization letter. The woman examined it, then nodded. Follow me. The vault smelled of old money and betrayal. The attendant led them to a numbered box. Richard's pulse quickened as she unlocked it and stepped away. Slowly, Kemi reached inside and pulled out a leather folder. Richard took it and flipped it open. Inside were bank statements, offshore account details, and a single flash drive. Kemi exhaled. That's it. But Richard's instincts screamed. Something wasn't right. He grabbed the flash drive and tucked it into his pocket. Let's go. As they turned to leave, the vault door slammed shut. A voice echoed from a hidden speaker. Mr. Adeyemi, Mrs. Okonjo, have stayed in Lagos. Richard's blood ran cold. Someone had been expecting them. The lights flickered. The air in the vault suddenly felt thinner. Kemi cursed under her breath. They locked us in. Richard scanned the room. No cameras. No obvious exits. But he knew one thing. This wasn't just a warning. It was a test. Whoever was playing this game wanted to see what they would do next. Richard pulled out his phone. No signal. Kemi's hands shook slightly. They're watching us. Richard turned to her. Do you trust me? She hesitated. Then, softly, no. Richard almost smirked. Good. Then, with a single punch, he shattered the emergency fire alarm panel. The sprinklers burst, water spraying everywhere. The alarms screamed through the building. And the vault door clicked open. Richard grabbed Kemi's hand. Run. They burst into the lobby, only to find a line of armed men waiting. At the center of them stood a man Richard hadn't seen in years. General Hassan Danjuma, a retired military officer, feared, ruthless, connected to every dark deal in West Africa. Danjuma smiled. Richard, it's been a while. Richard's jaw tightened. You're behind this. Danjuma chuckled. Not quite. But the people I work for. They want what's theirs. His eyes flicked to the folder in Richard's grip. Femi owed them. And now, you do too. Kemi's voice was cold. We don't have the money. Danjuma's smile widened. Then you better find it. He gestured, and his men stepped forward. Because if you don't, you'll both be dead by sunrise. Richard Adeyemi had always known that power came with a cost. But as he stood in front of General Hassan Danjuma, he realized something chilling. Some debts could never be repaid. Danjuma's soldiers surrounded them, their rifles trained on his chest. Beside him, Kemi Okonjo kept her face unreadable, but Richard could feel her tension. The retired general smirked. I'll make this simple. Femi stole from my employers. That money belongs to them. Richard folded his arms. And you think I have it? Danjuma chuckled. I think you're the only one still alive who can find it. Richard didn't blink. And if I say no? Danjuma's smile vanished. Then you die right here. Silence. Richard exhaled slowly. He had no choice. He had to find Femi's money, or die trying. He nodded once. Where do we start? Danjuma gestured, and one of his men tossed a phone at Richard's feet. Call me when you have something. Then, without another word, the soldiers lowered their weapons and disappeared into the night. Richard picked up the phone. The game had just begun. Richard and Kemi left Abuja before sunrise. Back in Lagos, they rented a safe house under fake identities, a small apartment in Ikeja, away from prying eyes. Kemi poured herself a drink, her fingers trembling slightly. We're running out of time. Richard pulled out the flash drive they had taken from the bank. Not yet. He plugged it into his laptop. A folder popped up. Encrypted files labeled with dates. Richard clicked one. A password prompt appeared. He frowned. Any ideas? Kemi leaned over, studying the screen. Try our wedding anniversary. Richard raised an eyebrow. You think Femi would use that? Kemi shrugged. He never forgot it. Richard typed the date. The screen flickered. Access granted. Kemi inhaled sharply. It worked. Richard scrolled through the files. Bank transactions. Wire transfers. Names. Then he found it. A document labeled Final Escape. He opened it. His blood ran cold. A name, a location, and a sum of money that made his head spin. $150 million. Hidden. In Accra, Ghana. Chapter 23. The chase begins. Richard didn't waste time. He booked the first flight out. But as he and Kemi arrived at Murtala Muhammad International Airport, his instincts screamed danger. Something felt off. They checked in, passed security, and reached the departure gate. Then Richard saw them. Two men in dark suits watching from a distance. They weren't military. They were something worse. Kemi noticed too. We've been made. Richard nodded. Time for Plan B. He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a side exit. They weren't flying to Ghana anymore. They ditched the airport, stole a car, and headed for the border. The journey was rough, hot, dusty roads, endless checkpoints, and the constant fear of being followed. By the time they reached Cotonou, Benin, night had fallen. Kemi leaned back in her seat, exhausted. How much longer? Richard checked the map. If we don't hit any trouble, we'll be in Accra by morning. But trouble was waiting for them. As they crossed into Togo, a black SUV appeared in their rearview mirror. It was time to fight. The SUV sped up, trying to force them off the road. Richard gritted his teeth. Whoever these people were, they wanted them dead before they reached Ghana. He slammed the brakes. The SUV swerved past them, just for a second. That was all Richard needed. He pulled out his gun, aimed, and fired. One shot. Two. The SUV spun out of control, crashing into a ditch. Richard didn't wait to see if they survived. He hit the gas. They had to keep moving. By the time they reached Accra, they were running on fumes. They checked into a small hotel, paid in cash, and laid low for a few hours. Then, with Kemi by his side, Richard made his way to a private storage facility in the heart of the city. The manager greeted them, barely looking up from his newspaper. How can I help you? Richard slid a piece of paper across the counter. It had a serial number, the code for Femi's hidden vault. The man nodded and led them to the back. When he opened the vault, Richard's breath caught. Stacks of cash, gold bars, documents. But before he could take it in, the room exploded with gunfire. Bullets shattered the walls. Richard grabbed Kemi, shoving her behind a shelf. A voice echoed through the vault. You really thought you could steal from us, Adeyemi? Richard's pulse pounded. Danjuma's men had arrived, and this time, they weren't leaving without the money, or without blood. Gunfire ripped through the air. Richard shoved Kemi behind a metal cabinet as bullets ricocheted off the vault's reinforced walls. Danjuma's men weren't here to negotiate. They wanted the money. and Richard dead. A guard who had been working at the storage facility tried to run. A bullet caught him in the back. He hit the ground with a heavy thud, blood pooling beneath him. Richard cursed. They were trapped. Kemi gripped his arm. We need a way out. Richard's mind raced. The vault had no windows. No emergency exits. Just one way in, and one way out. The sound of footsteps echoed as one of Danjuma's men stepped forward, gun raised. Richard didn't hesitate. He grabbed a gold bar from the stash and threw it with full force. It slammed into the man's face with a sickening crack. He collapsed. Richard lunged for his weapon. Now he was armed, and he was ready to fight. Kemi grabbed a duffel bag and started stuffing it with stacks of cash. Richard fired a few warning shots, forcing the gunman outside to take cover. Then he scanned the vault. Think. His eyes landed on the air vent in the ceiling. Climb up, he ordered Kemi. She didn't argue. Time was running out. Richard boosted her up before pulling himself inside. The metal groaned under their weight. Below them, the door burst open. Danjuma's men stormed in. A voice growled, "Find them." Richard and Kemi crawled as fast as they could. Then, bam! The vent collapsed under them. They fell, right into the middle of an underground parking lot. They landed hard. Richard's ribs ached, but there was no time for pain. They had escaped the vault. But they weren't alone. A lone figure stood in front of them, arms crossed. Tall, lean, a scar running from his forehead to his cheek. Richard's breath caught. It was Tunda Bakare. Kemi whispered, "What the hell is he doing here?" Richard didn't have an answer. Tunda smirked. "You didn't think I'd sit this one out, did you?" Tunda gestured toward the bag of money. "You took something that doesn't belong to you." Richard clenched his fists. "Femi stole it first." Tunda chuckled. "True. But you see, Richard, the problem is, you're outnumbered." Danjuma's men were still searching above. They had seconds to decide. Tunda leaned in. "I have a proposal. We leave together. I help you escape. And in return," Richard's jaw tightened, "you get a cut." Tunda grinned. "Now you're thinking." Kemi hissed, "We can't trust him." Richard glanced at the exit. Then at the duffel bag. Then back at Tunda. He had no choice. Deal. The streets of Accra were alive with movement. Neon signs. Honking cars. Unseen dangers. Tunda led the way, guiding them through back alleys. "I have a safe house. But we have to move fast." "I have a safe house. But we have to move fast." A black SUV appeared in the distance. Then another. Kemi cursed. "Danjuma's men." Richard pulled out his gun. "We have to split up." Tunda nodded. "You two take the eastern route. I'll create a distraction." Without waiting, he disappeared into the crowd. Richard grabbed Kemi's hand. "Run." They ran through the streets, weaving between vendors and parked motorcycles. Then, a bullet whizzed past Richard's ear. Kemi screamed. A second shot shattered a nearby window. Richard spotted an abandoned hotel. Inside, now, they kicked the door open and rushed up the stairs. But before they could reach the top, a familiar voice called out, "Richard." They turned, and there, standing at the entrance, was General Danjuma, surrounded by twice as many men as before. Danjuma clapped slowly. "You've caused quite the mess." Richard kept his gun raised. "What do you want?" Danjuma smirked. "The money, obviously." Richard's mind raced. Even if he handed over the bag, they would still kill him. Kemi whispered, "We're outnumbered." Danjuma stepped forward. "You have two choices. Give me what I want, or die right here." Richard's heart pounded. There had to be a way out. Then, a single gunshot echoed. One of Danjuma's men collapsed. The room erupted into chaos. Gunfire filled the air. Richard pulled Kemi down as bullets flew past them. Then, through the smoke, a figure emerged, Tunda. He was holding a gun. And he was smiling. Danjuma turned, Furious. You. Tunda pulled the trigger. One shot. Right through Danjuma's chest. The general collapsed. His men hesitated. Just long enough for Richard to act. He grabbed Kemi and ran. By the time they reached the coastline, the city was behind them. The money was still with them. Tunda leaned against the car, lighting a cigarette. Well, that was fun. Kemi glared. You used us. Tunda shrugged. You would have done the same. Richard exhaled. It's over. Tunda chuckled. You really believe that? Richard frowned. Tunda smirked. Danjuma wasn't the only one looking for this money. Richard's grip on the bag tightened.